Called order and announced quorum present, right? And then the citizens forum, do we have any speaker cards filled in or anybody questions?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, that whole statement there that's italicized on the agenda, is that meant to be read out loud since we don't know who's going to be chiming in on this, or?
If you have any speakers, you do.
Okay, and you'll let me know ahead of time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, then item C, secretary to administer the oath of office to newly appointed or reappointed directors. Are we ready for that?
Yes, sir. We still have, we need, Shelly Anderson and Linda. And of course, we can administer it to Angela when she logs in. Okay. Ladies, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, if you raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Shelly Anderson,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the Office of Economic Development Corporation Director
The duties of the
duties of
Economic
the Office of
Director
Economic Development Corporation Director
of the City of Joshua
of the City of Joshua,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the
to
best
the
of
best of
my ability
my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank God.
Thank you.
All right. Item D, discuss, consider, and possible action on appointment of the following positions for a one-year term: President, Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer. I know I've been president for a whole long time, and I don't mean to be hogging anything. So nobody's going to be, I won't be offended if anybody else wants to nominate or throw their hat in the ring or whichever. I'm totally fine with whatever y'all want to do.
If I may, Darren, do we, on this, at least on this one, do we want to wait until Angela gets sworn in so she can have some input on that?
Sure, she may want to be president.
Maybe. Hey, Alice, have you been able to get a hold of Angela and see what the issue she may be having is?
No, but I will right now.
Okay.
It took all of us a while with the technical things with the Zoom, and I was surprised how easy it was today. So obviously, whatever password stuff or setup stuff I had saved on my computer, it was seamless today for me. But we all remember the first couple times we did it, it was kind of choppy.
I think, my experience has been that if you're using a desktop or laptop camera, it seems to be way easier. If you're using a mobile device, an iPad, Chromebook, or phone, that's been my experience. You see, when you first get on there, it seems to be kind of glitchy. But certainly, I guess, Darren, while we're waiting on Angela to get on, so we can finish letter C and D, I don't think there's anything wrong with moving on to letter E since Angela wasn't here last time anyway.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, if we can just
Sure.
for now. Then we'll skip ahead to item E, discuss, consider, and take action on approval of the minutes from September 14th, 2020. I know I missed that one. I apologize to everybody for missing that. Had things come up and whatnot, so. But I did read through the minutes. I am fine with it. Does anybody else have any discussion about that or motions to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes as they are for this.
I second the motion.
Linda seconded. Show of hands. That was unanimous there, Josh.
Okay, got it.
All right, then the review the year-to-date financial statements as of September 30, 2020. And he is ready. He's got them shared and queued up, ready for questions.
Yeah, so this should be no surprises here. Last meeting we amended our year-end budget to account for some of the changes that we had during the fiscal year, to account for the the budget when it came to tax revenues, sales taxes, specifically in an obvious way, and to line up our year-to-date expenditures in terms of the budget. So, we have that summary page, right at, just under 100% when it comes to tax revenue. We did come in, I'll just speak to that momentarily. Sales tax, we actually amended the budget to just under 418, and we ended up a little bit over that. I'm sorry, just a little bit under that. We budgeted for 421 with a little bit under that. Now, I will say this: when we run these reports, this one was, if you look at the top of the page, it was ran on October 2nd. We usually have what I call stragglers whenever it comes to for invoices or last minute sales tax receipts that come in anywhere from the 1st all the way through the 15th of the month. This is probably a little bit behind in terms of the sales tax, obviously just about $4,000 there in terms of the budget. What that probably does not include is the sales tax receipts that we get actually off of the garbage collection accounts that they charge sales tax, and we get a little bit off of that too. So it's likely not going to change too much. Sorry, I've got a gnat bothering me in here. It's probably not going to change too much, but obviously 99% is about as good as it gets. And then on our expenditures, you can see overall 98, just under budget, which is always a little bit good. So we even ended up a little bit lower than what we had envisioned or what we had anticipated on the amended budget. So all in all, that our year end, according to our year end versus the amended, right at budget for revenues and right under budget for expenditures. It's a good place to be. So all in all, a very good fiscal year.
Yeah, it looked like it was all balancing out there and working out almost even. So,
does anybody have any questions on our what I'm doing now is I'm sharing the main page for the expenditure side of things. As you can see, a lot of what goes in there. Our debt service, mainly our debt service, but some of the things we knew for a fact we were gonna hit 100%, and then some things we amended again last month and still came in a little bit under budget on those items as well. So it's always good to say you come under budget when it comes to the budget. So unless anybody has any questions about that, otherwise I'd be glad to entertain any questions or comments.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any.
No, I don't either.
was it just a coincidence that 23,000 kind of moved around on different columns? You see what I'm talking about, where it says it pops up in several different places there, but the 23,000, that's in capital outlay.
Yeah, so it's in capital outlay on page 1. It's on capital outlay on page 3, and then capital outlay on page 4.
And then right down there, it's on downtown infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's because again, we ran this on October 2nd, and there was some miscommunication between Joanna and I on where that needed to be budgeted for. Because the work was done in downtown, I think there was some miscommunication in terms of what account it needed to go in. So that downtown station development, or the downtown infrastructure rather, technically it's not, you could say it's infrastructure, but that should have been budgeted for. The year-to-date actual should have been in the capital outlay because that's where we budgeted it for. So yeah, we'll clean that up in the audit.
Okay. That was the only comment I had to make or question.
Good evening, Angela.
Yes, welcome, Angela.
You're muted. Angela, there you go.
I am sorry.
You're
I'm
okay.
telling you, I couldn't hear a thing when it started, so I wasn't sure what was happening. So I joined in late, and then I couldn't hear.
Well, just to bring you up to speed, we have The board has reviewed and approved the minutes from the last meeting, and we just looked at the year-to-date or the year-end financials for the fiscal year. So Darren, I guess if you want to go back to those letters C and D of the agenda, that we can get Angela sworn in.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and, is everybody done with item F with the review of the financials? Is everybody ready to move on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll go back to item C, the city secretary to administer oath of office to newly appointed directors.
Okay, Miss Angela, if you raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Yes, ma'am.
I state your name,
I, Angela Nichols,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully execute
I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Economic Development Corporation Director
of Economic Development Corporation Director
of the City of Joshua
of the City of Joshua
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and of this state,
and
of this state,
of this state.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, like we said, welcome, Angela.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on board.
And then item D, discuss, consider possible action on appointment of the following positions for a one-year term: president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. You weren't present when I gave my little spiel a minute ago about I've been president for a long time. And
Uh-huh.
meaning to hog it. So I was just throwing that up there. So
What are the responsibilities for each position?
oh my goodness. No, I'm joking.
Alice,
Let me pull up the bylaws for just a second.
no,
Because
actually.
I know Alice takes care of a lot of the, she keeps the minutes and those sort of things, which is what typically a secretary of a board would do. So that's, I mean, you don't have to go into like formal detail, but
Yeah, if she starts reading stuff, I'm gonna feel bad about all the stuff I'm not doing. But
Yeah, so I'll just kind of step in here now because both of the EDCs are separate corporations. They have their own bylaws, and so and as such, they have to appoint their own officers, right? So the president and the vice president will basically serve the same roles as the mayor and the mayor pro tem as on the council. So whenever the president of the board obviously runs the meetings, signs documents. We had Darren has signed some things when it came to the land, purchase and some of the things on the PD for the Starbucks project that we just did as the landowner, right? Top A's a landowner over there, and we'll get into more discussion on that in a minute. The vice president would basically serve as the mayor pro tem, in the event that the president isn't here to run the meetings or needs to sign for some things in terms of yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
In terms of basically serving as the president is incapable of serving or indisposed. So, well, there we
Thank
go.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't remember being technically treasurer or anything else, but I've been on here so long, I don't know if I've had every role or not. And to be honest, like Josh mentioned, signing things, having to do stuff like that is the only thing that feels different about being president versus all the other years I was on here.
Darren, do you mind continue doing it?
Oh, I'll continue. I don't plan to change anything. I've been here so long, I don't plan to change. But like I said, I don't want anybody to think just because I'm in this position, I'm going to take offense or whatever. I'm going to be here regardless. So.
Well, I make a motion that we unanimously re-elect Mr. Beck to be our president again.
I would second that.
All right, do I have to say, ask for show of hands on that?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
show of hands on.
Okay.
I couldn't see everybody lost there and cross unless I scrolled. So was that unanimous or not? I don't know.
Only 2 of us voted for you.
Okay, well, I can't count, so I'm calling that unanimous. Thank you, everyone. But like I said, I don't want everybody to feel pressured every year when this comes up. I mean, all right. Well, then, since we covered E and F on the agenda, we'll move straight to G, which is discuss and receive update on the Starbucks project.
Well, wait a
Beck?
minute. We need to go back.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Beck, we still have Vice President, Secretary, and Treasurer.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Y'all had me so flustered, I forgot all the rest.
Because I
Sorry.
think that's part of the problem, because we don't currently have a vice president, right?
We
We
don't
have-
have a treasurer or a secretary that I know of either.
Well,
Yeah.
great.
Because
Then,
that's where we ran into, we were trying to determine what to do last time whenever you weren't here because we didn't have a vice chair.
oh, okay. Yeah, because I hadn't really, I think I bragged about not ever missing a meeting in 10 years or something, and then I end up missing
Right.
as soon as I said it. So yes, do we have a nomination for vice president or somebody wants to throw their hat in the ring?
Well, I think Shelley did such a good job last time that I
All right.
unanimously nominate Shelley.
I will second that. And show of hands.
We can vote on that, right?
Yes.
Yes, you are now a voting member, so I see your hand. And while your hand's up, we need somebody secretary also.
Do you want to be secretary or treasurer, Angela?
Mickey, shouldn't you be watching Monday Night Football or something? What's going on?
Yes, sir, I should.
So seriously, we have secretary next. Who wants to volunteer?
And let me just kind of speak up here. I don't want to obviously be dismissive of specifically these 2 positions, but as Shelley, was, the point she made earlier is technically speaking, or I guess fundamentally, or not fundamentally, realistically, Alice serves as the secretary in terms of taking the minutes and that sort of thing. But we do need
Yes.
to formally appoint someone. Same thing for treasurer. That's going to be me, basically, and or Joanna McClenny, our finance director. So that doesn't mean these 2 positions aren't important, because as the treasurer, can sign checks and other instruments like it says there, if we need them to, he or she to do that. And certainly if Alice isn't here, then I will obviously take on the responsibility of keeping minutes. Of course, if I'm not here and Alice isn't here, then somebody, I guess, would ultimately, you could still have the meeting, and then somebody would then have to do that. But these are going to be more formality appointments than really anything else. So you need to go ahead and volunteer, because you're probably not going to have to do too much for these 2 spots.
So Linda, which one do you want, since you've been the one volunteer?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, since Alice does all the work for the secretary, that's the position
Could've
I
jumped
want.
on that one.
Then I motion that Linda is secretary.
I second.
Show of hands. All right, nice. All right, and the same goes, I think, for treasurer then. Somebody needs to,
So Melissa or David or Angela, which one?
I'll do the treasurer.
Okay.
all right. I make a motion that David's the treasurer,
I'll second.
I'll second.
We'll vote.
and then show of hands. Congratulations. All right, so now we're legal.
Yes.
All that because I missed a meeting. Goodness gracious. My fault. Okay, so are we ready to move on to item G?
Yes.
Okay, discuss and receive update on the Starbucks project.
Yeah, so I hinted at it just a minute ago. We had Darren sign the PD application. that is getting prepared or is going to be going to the P&Z Commission next month. What that is currently speaking, our zoning ordinance zoning ordinance requires a plan development application or a plan development for every new project or new development in the Joshua Station Overlay District. Now, that is the area, obviously we're talking about, but this is the area that encompasses, it actually goes all the way to Diesel Dynamics is actually the northern boundary of the overlay district. And it goes all the way to where the event center is. If everybody's heard of the event center, it's fairly south
Yes.
along 174. So it doesn't just encompass the area, the kind of the heart of the area, which is Brookshires, YMCA, Cypress Creek, Burger King, and our property and whatnot. So it's a much larger than what you actually see on the ground right now. But per our zoning ordinance currently requires a plan development going for every project. So Burger King, that was its own plan development. Cypress Creek Apartments was its own plan development. And plan development applications go before both the P&Z and City Council for approval because they're zoning processes. So of course, just as an aside, we are working. We've hit a lot of snags in the development and review process that have kind of slowed some things down. We think unnecessarily when it comes to the plan development requirement. So we actually, if it's not on this, I think it may be on this agenda for this week's council meeting. If not, the next one, we're going to be submitting some changes in the zoning ordinance to remove that plan development requirement because it's very redundant in terms of the new zoning ordinance, the new state laws that went into effect last year. So it's bringing in it, kind of updating it to take into account those things so we can kind of move things along a little bit quicker than we're able to right now. There'll still be several layers of approval when it comes to those projects in that area, but this one thing kind of creates a very, very lengthy and cumbersome administrative requirement that we can kind of skip over and still get to the heart of what we're trying to do as a community in that area. So when it comes to the Starbucks project, I mentioned earlier, Darren signed the PD application. So that'll be going to the P&Z, I think next month on the November meeting for the commission. That will be basically setting the, what's called the concept plan. So it's not exactly a site plan, but it's a concept of what it might look like. Not might, but what the overall, what it will look like. And then of course the details get kind of added in later when it comes to the platting and specific site plan and building permits and whatnot. So that's the first step on this. Right now, each individual project, we're asking them to come in with the PD. So what we're going to be seeing right now is a PD that encompasses all of, from Joshua Station Boulevard, which is the street in between Brookshires and our property, right? That goes all the way back to the YMCA, to the south to Mountaineer Road, and it's going to actually encompass Mountaineer Road to an extent. What you'll see going forward, if you follow along with the P&Z meetings, the council meetings on the site plan, is you'll see the Starbucks on the north end, Panda Express on the south end, with that middle spot to be kind of filled in later. And as these projects come in, they will be platted individually. There are 4 different lots or parcels, at least planned right now. And so as they come in, they'll be platted individually. Now, you guys won't see that process per se, but certainly as Starbucks and Panda, certainly Starbucks, because that's really the deal. The deal that we have with TRC, the retail connection, the 380 agreement for economic development that we have with TRC is primarily focused on that northern pad, that pad 9 or lot 9 for the Starbucks. Panda Express is not technically a part of that agreement, but is a result of that agreement. If you understand, that was kind of the entire idea, is once we did this, this linchpin of getting a national brand specifically, but getting something started on there, the rest of it will kind of fill in. And then we've gone with kind of doing bookends, which should make filling in the middle a lot easier when it comes to vendors and tenants and that sort of thing, because a lot of the infrastructure almost all the infrastructure will already be in place. So we won't have to be kind of putting it in as the businesses come in. So the plan development application for Starbucks or the entire area will be going to the P&Z next month. Where we stand right now with TRC is we have the funding set aside. If you remember, We're using the TIF funds that are restricted for public improvement, infrastructure improvements in that area. You guys in last year's budget deposited $150,000 into the CIP specifically for that project. And then this year, over the course of the fiscal year, we'll also be transferring another $300,000 to the CIP specifically for this project to get us there when it comes to the overall budget of the city's input on, or financial input on this. The lender, or the TRC, is actually going to lenders right now to secure financing for the construction, the interim construction part of this. One of the things we're having a little bit of difficulty, and I'm going back and forth between the Matt Wilson, the TRC lead, and our attorney and myself. We're going back and forth on some of the, I guess, collateralization requirements the lenders are seeking right now. So we're kind of in a no man's land right now. TRC is trying to get the financing for the construction side of the loan. The bank is wanting, I guess, to see some kind of guarantee for the city's funding part of this. And we just, the city attorney and I really haven't been able to come up with a realistic mechanism that would guarantee TRC that if for some reason the city were to back out of this project, that TRC would still be able to collect all the funds, because they'd be on the hook for this construction loan. As you can imagine, they're going out for $1.82 million construction loan. And of course, they're using and showing the city's part of the financing to show the bank that the money's going to be able to be paid back. And because we don't have a segregated fund for that, putting it in escrow is not going to do anything in terms of giving that guarantee. So we're going back and forth with TRC for exactly what the bank wants, so we can hopefully get them some type of document or some type of wording to show them that the money will indeed be there. Now, it won't all be there because, as I mentioned just a while ago, the last part of that, $300,000, we obviously don't deposit all that from the top A into the CIP at one time. That happens over the course of the year as sales tax receipts come in. So we're still some moving parts there, but we're still working on a December groundbreaking. That is kind of the goal on all sides right now. Ours, the planning and review side of things, and then TRC, we're planning on breaking ground in December. So it wouldn't surprise me that gets pushed back a month or two. These things kind of go, but that is at least the plan, assuming the PD gets approved next month and the financing can get secured in the next 5 to 30 days. We actually should start seeing some ground being broken in December. I will say that we're still waiting on some TxDOT approvals. So the engineering by Pacheco Koch did for us on that project was submitted to TxDOT about 2.5 weeks ago. We asked for an expedited review of that, which can be about 3 weeks. So we're really hoping any day now we get some word back on the approval on the engineering, and that's the longest. The engineering takes the longest to review and approve, just because of drainage and concrete thicknesses and all sorts of things, traffic analysis. A lot goes into that review. So we should be hearing any day from TxDOT. But the review on that is both for the median break, right? So we would eventually have that hooded left turn, so the northbound left turn going into Joshua Station, and then the curb cuts that serve the property specifically to those the north and south curb cuts. So that's kind of where we're at on that project, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions, or if you guys want any more specifics than I've given so far.
So if I understood it right, you're saying the TRC, you mentioned collateralization. They're not being able to point to a chunk of money sitting in an account that they can show as collateral to help get their funding, right?
Well, those are my words. That's the way I'm understanding it. Because even if we were to set up like an interest in seeking fund or put it in escrow, that so the agreement envisions that when because they're except for the hooded left turn, they are constructing all the improvements, including our public improvements, right? Now we have that part of that agreement is reimbursing them for that construction. Now, I can show them our budgets and I can show them the money in the TIF account in the general fund. But what I can't show them is any type of legal documentation that guarantees TRC those funds if the city were to back out of the project for whatever reason. Because our agreement doesn't say that. Our agreement doesn't say if we back out, you still get $1.8 million, right? It only envisions that when they do the work, that we will pay them back for that. Now, obviously, if we pull out of the deal, they're not going to be doing the work. So we're kind of this no man's land of or chicken and egg situation here. So that is kind of where we're at. We're not able to show them, here's the money. It's in its own specific account, because even if we did that, there's still no guarantee that, legally speaking, there's still no legal mechanism that the TRC would be able to get that money no matter what. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, because I kind of understood the whole turning lane with TxDOT and that kind of thing. In my mind, that's separate than the project,
It is.
on
Right.
doing the lots.
Right.
And I thought our biggest chunk of that was the alley and all the infrastructure that was going to be having to run down behind those lots. But
Yeah, so we have a public access road that goes from Joshua Station Boulevard to Mountaineer that runs the west side, north and south. That's correct. Then we have Mountaineer Road. We're going to do some improvements there. So as people, we needed kind of a second access there.
Yep.
So we're going to improve Mountaineer Road, which will be public improvements as well. And then we're funding the strip. And I'm kind of I should have put this on here. Let me see if I can't. Let me unshare my. Am I sharing my screen still?
all I see is you because I'm in speaker mode, I think.
Does anybody else see my screen?
No.
Okay. Well, does everybody kind of envision, and basically it's a rectangle, right? So if this is north, you have the Joshua Station Boulevard, you have the access road to Mountaineer, and then right here where the Starbucks would be, we're paying for that pavement basically on the site. And then up here would be 174 where the hooded left turn is. So the hooded left turn, yes, Darren, is going to be a separate project and be funded, where the city will do that ourselves in terms of bidding and doing the construction and blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to on-site improvements, that'll be TRC. But either way, the city, per the agreement, has agreed to fund all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We keep talking about strip. These can potentially be separate lots with separate buildings, similar to like Golden Chick and Panda Express, the way they're set up there, so they can have their drive-throughs.
Right. Yeah. And so, and I probably should specify or be maybe a correction. When we say the access strip, we're talking about kind of an access drive that would serve the entire back of serve the entire area via the back of the west side. But yeah, right now what we envision is there are 4 different lots, and so you would have 4 separate buildings on those
Okay.
lots with 1 or 2, in the Starbucks case, 3 vendors in each building. So yes, it would be very similar to what you see in the Commons in Burleson.
Okay.
Okay, that was a pretty extensive update there. Does anybody else have any questions?
I don't.
No.
I don't.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I'll move on to item H, discuss, consider possible action on the new downtown economic development project.
Okay, now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here. All right, so what we're going to be talking about tonight is kind of the very first blush for you guys in terms of a proposed project in the downtown area. Now, as you can see, the graphic we have here, we've got 12th Street along the top of the page. North would be the bottom of the page, right? Main Street. Is everybody kind of oriented on what we're talking about?
Yes.
So where it shows the proposed retail building, that's where the old apartments were across the street from City Hall. that were torn down that is now a vacant lot. Okay, so it's right across the street from Hickory Tree, across the street on one side and across from City Hall on the other. This comes to us via Robbie Rumfield. He actually purchased Mike Aronekes, if anybody knows that name, had initially purchased that corner lot after the apartments were torn down. Robbie has gone in and purchased that property. Mr. Rumsfeld, I don't think he's on the call, so I won't refer to him by his first name. But Mr. Rumsfeld has purchased that lot and has some ideas on what to do with it. So one of the issues that we've been dealing with for several years, and one that we just helped with this last year, that $23,000 that Darren was referenced earlier, was some for public improvements for parking. It's going to be a very, very similar setup here. So what you see highlighted in yellow, that lot you guys own. Okay, Top A owns that lot. That has taken a number of incarnations in terms of plans for what we may do with that. As a matter of fact, right before I arrived at the city, and back in 2015, there was talk of a food truck park and some type of venue, that sort of thing. That kind of fell through right before I got here, based on the developer, kind of dropped the ball on that. And so as it stands now with the development going on in downtown and the role that Mr. Rumsfeld is playing in that, this is kind of the idea. The parking is going to continue to be an issue when it comes to downtown, but luckily we've got some area to work with. So this is a kind of a first blush look at what it might look like. Okay, so this would be on city property, Top A property here. We're looking at, I want to say 58 for some reason, and don't quote me on that. Nobody, don't count, Darren, the parking spaces, but I think it's some 4 dozen, maybe more than that, parking spaces that we're envisioning, and some landscaping. This is just kind of like a like I say, a brainstorm session here to provide the parking for this area. And if anybody can see my hand here on my screen, so we've got this is the alleyway, obviously, and one of the issues that we have is there are utilities in this alleyway. Otherwise, we would have already abandoned this alleyway, and then would allow probably purchase of our property and a replatting of it to make it all one property. But because there are utilities in that alleyway, we are not able to abandon that. So that will be some type a drive area, a drive-through, a walking area that serves the buildings next door to it. So what I kind of need from you guys, we met, she's not on the call, but Miranda, the mayor, Mike Peacock, and I met with Mr. Rumsfeld a couple weeks ago to talk about this, what Mr. Rumsfeld is wanting or requesting rather, before he moves forward with his plans and kind of spends more money on engineering and building design and that sort of thing. And what I didn't include on this is some of the elevations, the side elevations, what it might look like. And I apologize for that, but I'll probably be bringing that to you guys at a future date, because ultimately you guys won't have, that won't come to you guys. That would go before the Heritage Overlay Committee and the council for approval. But it tries to utilize that lot as very similarly to the apartment building that was already there. It's basically rebuilding it, not rebuilding it the way it was, but a very, very similar orientation to look very similar to the buildings across the street for that theme that we're going for that the Heritage Overlay District calls for. So what this is really is try to get you guys a visual of what it might look like and get your input on any type of interest and moving forward with a project like this. There are 2 paths that we would likely take on this. One would be we advertise or for this project or this property for sale, and take bids on it, and then of course the highest bidder would get it. Ultimately, it would stand to reason and be obvious that we put the bid out there with the hopes that Mr. Rumsfeld would be the highest bidder. We would sell the land to him, and then that would be private property, and he would do the improvements himself. And then there would also be, he would also, because it is private property, in that case, there could be restrictions on that parking, time restrictions or parking for only X, Y, and Z business, that sort of thing. Or we set up a very similar agreement that we set up with TRC in that, well, kind of like what we did across the street for his place down the street, the parking improvements that, as we talked about last time, remember, Shelley, we weren't going to do this after the fact again. We were going to do this ahead of time this time. But through a very similar agreement as we did with TRC, we would draft an agreement to basically Robbie would do or have the construction completed and then be reimbursed the sales tax receipts from the new business. Okay, so and he has indicated, Miranda, I spoke with her a little bit earlier today, and she had indicated that he actually would prefer the second option, which would remain city property, public parking. Okay, we would, of course, if it's public property, we would need to go through the bidding process. And I actually got he sent us an estimate. I'm going to click over the screen here. And it's likely that he, based on his connections or network of people that he works with, because obviously Rumsfeld Drywall would not be the one doing the work, but this just came as an estimate from his bookkeeper. We're looking at about 170 grand, which is very close to what we did internally. Kristen over at Public Works, the estimate that he drafted was very, very close to that, about the 170 to 180 mark. As we all know, public improvement projects, 50,000 and over, must be bid publicly. And so we would have to go through that process, and that would take, a couple, 3 months to get through that, to get the project bid, get it engineered, and get that awarded. So, and that would come to you guys with it being top A property. So if and when that's all approved, we go through that process of picking the contractor, and then Robbie would, Mr. Rumfeld would fund those improvements per the contract. And then we would actually pay him back via, as I said earlier, via sales tax receipts from the new project. Now, one of the things that we're going to want to keep in mind is that because this parking area would specifically serve the proposed retail site and whatever other businesses come into just the north of that in the future, we would likely want to keep the reimbursements for this parking area for the new businesses, and maybe not necessarily, this was to be up for you guys really to decide, but not necessarily all sales tax receipts, right? That the city top A and top B all collected in terms of annually. So I think we want to be very specific on how we're paying this back if that's how you guys decided to go through it. So this is kind of like a bird's eye view of the project, kind of what the idea is and the different ways we get there and the funding mechanisms for doing it one way or the other. Ultimately, Mr. Rumfeld is on board with funding the project. So he would either be doing it, on his own if he purchased the property from us, or he would be paying for it via the public bidding process once it was completed, and we reimbursing him back that way.
Okay, I want to jump in here. I alone could take up 15 more minutes worth of questions here. Is this something that we have to decide? Is this a time sensitive thing we have to decide today, or could this be tabled till next week? We're running short on time.
Yeah, like what I was saying earlier, is this just to get it on your radar, get your input, get some feedback from you guys on what y'all want to see. If you have any specific questions about anything, if y'all want to, open it up for sale, or look at going it alone, if you will, in terms of the project. But this is just get it on your radar, get some input, and then so there's no action tonight, no votes or anything tonight. It's just kind of get it on your radar, and then we certainly would be putting it back on the agenda for next month after you guys have had some time to think about it.
Personally, I
think
like the idea of having it be public property rather than private property, just given the proximity that it is to City Hall, to the Young Life building. Who owns the property that the Young Life building is on?
That'd be Mr. Mallory, of Mallory Printing. He currently owns that. And I know Mr. Rumfeld has kind of been back and forth with Mr. Mallory for a while now, trying to maybe, you know, acquire the rest of that block. He has not been successful up until now, but yeah, it'd be Mr. Mallory. And one of the sticking points there is Young Life itself, is if there is not a another place that would facilitate their meetings, and maybe even be an improvement. So I know Mr. Rumsfeld has actually been in talks with the Young Life folks to see if there's something they, you know, some way they could maybe find them a better place that would kind of incentivize Mr. Mallory to sell.
Right. Yeah, because I know those kids put a lot of work into that building.
Yes.
So, but I personally, my opinion, I would like to see that parking area remain public, not private, just so that there's not a restriction on who can park there.
Well, and I will say this: there most likely would be at least time restrictions. You know, no parking overnight. You know, that sort of thing. It's very, very common for public areas. You know, and I think there's some at least initial concern that we might have some people in the residential areas using the parking lot to park overnight, that sort of thing. And so with it being public parking, we certainly could make restrictions, but it would be basically open during business hours. You know, so some of the things we were thinking about is, you know, no parking, you know, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., you know, very, very standard kind of things. But yeah, that would serve the entire downtown area.
Josh, who profits from this?
That's what I was going to ask.
Well, define profit. And I'm not trying to be coy here, but ultimately, any type of project like this that we do, you know, it's ultimately the whole point of it is that it profits the city, in terms of availability, in terms of more retail spots.
Well, it's
sales tax receipts.
incentivization to bring in. I mean, the limitation of parking is prohibitive of bringing in new businesses downtown. There's no parking, and it just makes it hard to consider bringing in a new business.
Right. So if you're talking about
Mr. Rumsfeld does not profit from this, you're saying, right?
Sure, you will. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought.
Well, that's what I was about to get to. Initially, you know, this is going to be one of those spend money to make money things. So he would initially be doing these improvements, but he needs the parking to be able to sell the spot to a retailer who he would then get rents from, right? Lease payments from. So eventually, yes, the developer would profit from this in terms of putting money in his pocket, but also the business owner that ends up going in there. And then that's one more retail space that our community would have. So it's a quality of life, you know, convenience thing. So ultimately, and I wasn't trying to be coy or a smart aleck, it really depends on how you determine profit. But yes, ultimately, Mr. Rumsfeld's interested in making money. So yeah, this would be to those ends. But ultimately, it certainly would profit the area, the downtown area, and the community at large at the end of the day.
So Josh, what you're saying is that financially, the city will gain, or because of the retail it's going to bring in, that's the gain that the parking will provide. Is that correct?
And it
Okay.
actually has, that's exactly right, Melissa. And it actually has an additional benefit of serving the businesses that are already there, right?
Yeah.
So as you probably have seen, and we actually have some plans for some parking on the other side, but you know, the little strip area that everybody parks across from Hickory Tree and Mojo's, right? That eventually, you know, would be part of this. But having this entire area where it's just a short walk across the street is actually going to serve the other side of Main Street as well. So it has the added benefit of not only serving this proposed retail space, but what we already have. As Shelley just brought up, parking is already kind of a pain in the parking rear.
Okay.
But yeah, so that would be it. But I think ultimately the 380 agreement is probably, you know, Shelley, I think, you know, hits on a couple of things when it comes to the public parking aspect of this. But funding wise, it's really a no-brainer for us because we're not going to be out any money, at least at the beginning. And we're only going to be out money once it proves to be, actually the site actually starts producing sales tax receipts. So, he has all the incentive to put this in to incentivize, somebody going in there, and the faster he gets somebody in there, the faster he gets paid back.
So is it paid parking or free parking?
I've seen it. It probably would be free. I think it kind of depends on some things. I mean, we've all been downtown Fort Worth and everywhere else where you have to pay to park. You see the Burleson's parking issues. Just with development, you're going to eventually, it may be that you end up having to put some restrictions or pay to park types of issues. But right now, I just don't see that being in the cards for us, at least initially.
Okay.
I have a
So,
question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
What is this red paddle-looking thing? Looks like a ceiling
light.
thing.
A light.
It's a street light, basically, a parking light.
Street light. Okay.
Every time I look at that, I think it's a ceiling fan. So yeah,
That's what I knew it wasn't. But so we're just gonna go and pretend nothing ever grew there. We lose all those pretty trees.
well, not necessarily. Like I say, this is just a kind of a concept.
Yeah,
Eventually, we when we develop property, we're held to the same standards as other developers are too. So any type of tree preservation study that we might have to do, or anything else that landscaping, that sort of thing, that the developer would have to do, we would have to do as well. So if we have trees in there that are protected, and if there's not a way to mitigate, okay, so very, very, very literally, we may end up losing those big trees, but we would have to compensate with some other type of landscaping in terms of mitigation.
well, once you start concreting all around the roots, the top of the roots, you're gonna lose the tree.
Yep.
But I was so hoping we'd have a park down there. I really was. But
Yeah, the
what do you
downtown revitalization plan that we conducted a couple of years ago now does envision some green spaces. But like a lot of downtowns, you're not, unless you just have a lot of area to work with, you're not going to have much of that. What you do try to do, obviously, is in landscaping and green, kind of smaller green spaces. And there's nothing to say that we don't have that. We may not have something like that in other parts of downtown. As a matter of fact, there's a little triangle piece on our property in Joshua Station that was likely going to be very, very close to what you're getting at, Linda. It's kind of a green, kind of with the park bench, and that sort of thing, because it's kind of unusable because there's a gas easement, gas line easement that goes through it. So this is, I don't want to scare anybody off of this. This is just a concept plan that Robbie submitted. We asked him to put together. So it may or may not look like this, but certainly we want to try to maximize the space to get as many parking spaces as possible.
well, I know the parking is really needed downtown. It really is.
And we still don't have any additional input on the overpass plan.
No, as a matter of fact, coincidentally, Shelley, I've been going back and forth with the area engineer today by email because I had drafted a letter on the mayor's behalf to send to the district engineer in Fort Worth to emphasize our need for this project and our preferred alternate route. And for some reason, they won't give me the guy's email. So
because it's potentially in this, it's potentially up, so that could impact this property.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how we can make a decision until we know. I mean, I would hate to invest that much money and then they come in and tear half of it up.
Well, yeah. So the alternate route E that they're looking at right now would go straight down 12th Street and go right, basically take all of this out. We actually brought this up we talked about this at the meeting I referenced earlier between Mr. Rumfeld and Miranda and Mike Peacock and the mayor and I. And Robbie would lose Hickory Tree, right? We would lose City Hall and the PD department, which isn't so bad. To lose those two buildings, we can rebuild something better. It needs to be updated as well. And Robbie's stance on this was, well, they're just going to have to pay me for what I put in there. And it would be the same for us. We would get fair market share for whatever land they end up taking from us. But
Fair market
what we-
share is not always what you put into it, though.
No, that's true. But I think one of the issues we're having when it comes to will they, won't they, when they will, in terms of TxDOT, is do we sit back? And I think it's a very good point you're making. Do we sit back and wait on TxDOT? As a matter of fact, when you go to the project tracker for this project, it's been moved up from starting construction in 10 years to starting construction in 4 years. So, you know, where we're at in terms of they've not arrived on our actual route yet that they're going to actually move with, and that's still up in the air. I really can't tell you how long it's going to take. It might be the entire 4 years before they actually even put a shovel in the ground for this.
Wow. Okay.
But that's a very good point. Yeah, like I said, we talked about that in the meeting with Robbie.
Well, I don't have any other questions right now, and I know we're holding up type B, but
Yeah, I do want to come back and revisit this because, like I said, I had to talk about it. And I agreed with a lot of the points that were made. So if everybody's okay, I don't know what kind of confirmation or what kind of answer you needed, Josh, about.
Well, really, it's just a consent. You know, if there's a, you know, if we arrived at a consensus this evening in terms of, yes, we want to try to sell it, you know, and let it be private, or no, we're going to try to make the improvements and then, you know, let me worry about the funding aspect of that and the 380 and all that kind of stuff with Robbie. But ultimately, you guys will obviously, you know, you guys, excuse me, you guys wouldn't technically sign under a 380 because legally the top 8 or EDCs can't do that, but it was certainly, you guys would approve it and would go to the council for official approval. But that's what I was, you know, if we did anything tonight, it would just be some direction on which one of those two paths everybody prefers that we go.
Okay, so that I had a
private
question
parking
on.
versus public parking.
Yeah, so for that, I had a question on. A lot of time, the other property, he built a property, it didn't have very many parking spaces, right?
Right.
And we talked then about, was there rules about when you build a business, you have to have X amount of parking places available for that. So like, for example, his lot, he's got the whole lot taken up with the building, 4 different spaces. If we didn't give him parking spaces, did we have rules in place that meant he would just have to have only 2 spaces for business and all the rest parking lot? Did we have rules like that about parking?
We do, but we don't have it in the heritage overlay. The heritage overlay is not envisioned in the heritage overlay regulations that, for instance, this is coming in at 5,500 square feet and is utilizing the entire lot, right? And the updated zoning ordinance, we actually have setbacks for commercial buildings now. But the downtown area is a little bit different because it actually envisions that you park, right? You get on the sidewalk and the store frontage is right off the sidewalk, like a lot of downtown areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so specifically to the heritage overlay, there's no way to both meet our requirements in the downtown revitalization plan of trying to make this as walkable as possible while also providing parking lots, right? So, and if you look at the buildings on the other side of the street, everything is 0 lot line. So if we had, which we don't, but if we had, you've got to do X, Y, and Z amount of parking, then that building would be about half the size that it is now.
Yeah.
And no one's going to go in, no one's going to try to lease it. So,
And so that's where I was going. Since we don't have those rules in place, anybody that comes in and buys property to build a business, they're going to go ahead and maximize their building space
right.
and leave it to everybody else to worry about where to park.
right.
It's on us.
See, I've already changed my position on
Well,
how
it's
I
really,
feel about
I mean,
being
what you,
public.
yeah, what you voiced there is really no different from every city with any downtown in the entire state. So you have a mixture of, because the downtown area is you're trying to maximize the walkability. In our downtown revitalization plan, all the area is basically walking sidewalks and walking trails. And then there are certain areas for parking, but that's all envisioned to be public parking. So yeah, we are going to be, that's part of what cities do, is when you have a space that is maximized or developed to maximize public activity, you're going to have a responsibility to provide a lot of that infrastructure.
Yeah. So Shelley, you started to say something about you changed something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of back and forth. I mean, just due to the risk as far as the I think it would be beneficial for it to be public parking, but then again, if the majority of the businesses down there are owned by Rumfield and is going to be the primary beneficiary, I mean, I do see the value. I do see the value for the city of Joshua and the residents to have more parking downtown. But whenever you're talking about the risk, not knowing what TxDOT's going to do, you know.
So okay, to speak to that, that leads to my second question I was going to ask, Josh. You say it would be a tax, what'd you call it, deferment for sales tax for Rumsfeld. Well, but what sale, would it be Rumsfeld out of Rumsfeld taxes, which is just the lease on the property, or the individual businesses that are operating and selling goods in those?
Well, it wouldn't be a tax deferral. So the reimbursement for the public improvements Robbie would pay for would come from tax receipts that are produced by the business.
So whatever business goes in would be told by Rumsfeld, hey, if you lease my property, you've also got, well, no, they'd still pay taxes. They don't know where it's going. They don't care.
Yeah, the sales tax that it's generating would go towards paying this off.
Yeah. That's why really it's no money out of our pocket up front.
Right.
Because Rumsfeld's paying for the whole thing. He's just making his money back, whatever it was, 171,000. Once those sales receipts reached 171, then the city of Joshua would start getting sales tax.
Unless TxDOT comes in and tears it up before that happens, where does?
And that's what was my third question. If that happens and Rumsfeld hasn't been paid back,
Who
settles that debt? Is it all washed or?
are we on
Well,
the hook?
I mean, yeah, so this is, excuse me. I think, it would depend on what the 380 said. Obviously, we would not want to guarantee repayment if we lose the business that the parking is meant to serve, and we're still, so that actually then we're still required to pay him back with what, right? If the mechanism to pay it back is the new business, and the new business gets torn down, well, now we don't have the mechanism, so we're going to have to go into a rest of our sales tax to pay that back. So I think the wording in the 380 or whatever agreement we come up with would be extremely important, obviously, for that aspect of it. But it's kind of like the risk he'd be taking, right? He puts in that investment, and then obviously, and I would think in terms of disclosures when it comes to whoever he is kind of selling this to in terms of a tenant, this would be something, I'm sure he's told them too, is like, well, look, I'm gonna have this retail space for you and it might be good for 4 years or 6. It just kind of depends on what TxDOT does. Yeah.
I think I would just like to know more about what the risk is and in the different scenarios.
Or to put more definition to what we would be signing up for.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, if TxDOT does come down there, well, I don't foresee them taking that whole lot, but half of it, the parking lot. What do you think, Josh?
Sorry?
If TxDOT did come down to the middle of 12, I can't see them taking that whole lot that we own all the way to the north.
Well, it's that right of way that they need for that is pretty big.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So we would likely lose that entire half of that block.
Okay.
It would certainly, I think just by the amount of, if you take into account, I don't have the schematic in front of me, but when you take in, when I look at I was just looking at this earlier, but the amount of right of way they need for that is just because remember it's going to be an underpass.
Yeah.
So
You got the whole embankment.
More right of way than they normally would. So yeah, it would likely take out this building, our parking, PD, City Hall. It would take all of that. So
We get an opportunity to build a whole new downtown, a new old town.
yeah.
In a new place.
Like everybody else likes to build a whole brand new old town.
Okay, so I think I've got my marching orders here now in terms of you guys are open to it. Want some more? We're leaning towards the public improvement or public parking side of this. You guys
Depending on
want some more, you would also want some more detail in terms of one, the mechanism in terms of the payback and the risk in terms of TxDOT's future plans.
The
Yes.
what ifs, the what ifs, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thanks for letting us go down that path. I apologize to Type
Oh,
B.
Glenn, we're sorry.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to item I. Any future agenda items, requests by directors on the next agenda? I would think what we just talked about is number one.
Right.
Yeah, some more information on that. So if there's anything else,
I don't have anything.
No,
okay, and if everybody's okay, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 7:39, let's call it.
All right, thank you.
Next time.
Thank you, everyone. I'm rushing off.